Claire. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my very first vlog. Let's break the ice really quick. I'm an awkward person. Things will get awkward at times. That's just how it's gonna be. So with that said, I am super excited to be talking to you guys today about mental health, about my journey with mental health, and just yeah, expressing and being vulnerable about my life. And I hope you guys take it well, and I'd really just like to break the stigma. I think there's such a stigma around mental health, and it's getting better, for sure. It's getting better. People are learning more about mental health, but it's still there. I think when people hear that someone has a mental health disorder, they start to look at that person differently. Not judge that person, but just look at that person differently. And I'm here to say that people with mental disorders are normal people. They're not stopped by their disorder, they're just hindered. I'm not stopped by my disorder, I'm just simply hindered. And yeah, my disorder puts up a damn good fight sometimes, but it's just all about moving through that and working through that. I still seize my goals, I still go after aspirations, I still hold down a job, I still function in society. It's just at times a little bit harder. So yeah, I just want you guys to look at that with an open mindset and just be aware of that as you move forward learning about mental health. Things are so good. Snacks are always necessary, like always. So I'm under review for a diagnosis of bipolar, but it's thought at this point that I do have bipolar just from evaluating my patterns of behavior. I am diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and the way that my bipolar likes to play out is through obsessive compulsive thought patterns, as well as impulsivity, mild depression, and a little bit of elevated mood here and there. So with that being said, let me explain. Yeah, so I grew up in a pretty normal house until I was about 10 years old. I had my mom, my dad, my sister, typical childhood, what you'd expect to see. And with my parents getting divorced, it put a lot of pressure on me to be the protector. I was the oldest, so I needed to now step up and be the protector, the influencer. I had to watch over my sister and make sure that she was okay. And then as we moved on down the road a little bit, a few years later, both my mom and my dad got remarried. So moving into the blended family situation, I was still the oldest in all of the stepkids and my sister. So I was always protecting, always looking out for the younger ones, always felt like it was my job to set a good example and be there for them and support them in any way that I could. But with that, I think came a lot of anxiety subconsciously, and I think this is where my anxiety began to manifest. So then it was just generalized anxiety. The next couple years going into middle school, just anxiety over a lot of self-image, a lot of just general things like what if this happens, what's gonna happen, just anxiety about what ifs and the past. So this played out in just general feeling the anxiety in my body. So when I have anxiety, it likes to energetically come out. And so that means that I have nausea, I get headaches, I get eye twitches, my calves cramp up, my shoulders get really tight and tense, my neck gets really tight and tense. So that's kind of how I know I'm anxious, because my body gives me those signs. So that would happen on and off through my middle school years. Then in my sophomore year of high school, I had my first, what I'm gonna call an episode. And this is the first kind of thought pattern episode that I had that put me in the most anxious state and then further into a depressive state. So here we go. This is really hard for me to share, but I'm gonna come out with it because I feel like I need to be vulnerable with you guys. My sophomore year of high school, for some reason, one day, out of the blue, I started having this fear, and it was just a fear that I was gonna be a lesbian. And it's just kind of funny saying it now, but it was it overtook my life. It was what I thought about when I woke up. It was what I was thinking about when I went to bed. I was scared to watch TV because I didn't want to look at a girl and feel something that I didn't want to feel. It wasn't that I was a lesbian, it was that this traumatic fear entered my brain and it was just on repeat. Like, oh my gosh, like what if you're a lesbian? And I feel like at that stage it's something that everyone kind of goes through. Like you kind of go through like just this time in your adolescence where you're becoming who you are, you're learning about yourself. But it was like that on steroids. And I had a boyfriend at the time. I knew in my heart that like I like guys, like I knew that. But there was just this fear in the back of my head, and it got so bad sometimes that I remember one time I was at a slumber party for a team bonding event, and I actually had to have my stepdad come pick me up because I felt uncomfortable being around my teammates because I was scared that I was going to look at one of my teammates and think something that I didn't want to think. It's not that I was thinking that way, but I didn't want to think that way, and it made me really anxious, and this went on for about 5 months. I felt it in my body with those symptoms that I was explaining, those anxiety symptoms, and it was just a battle because it was all that I thought about. And when I realized that I wasn't thinking about it, then my brain would go, oh wait, you're not thinking about it, let's start thinking about it again because we need to protect ourselves. So that happened, and then the weirdest thing is one day it just stopped. It just went away. 5 months of nonstop, repetitive, compulsive thinking about this subject, and then it just stopped. So that happened. My junior year of high school is when I had my first panic attack, and anxiety really started to rev up a notch for me. So it all started, I was in Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I remember one day I was sitting in class and one of my teachers was giving a testimony of his life, and he was explaining how his father died, and I'm not going to go into drastic detail, but basically his father died of a brain aneurysm, and it was just, he told it in very graphic detail, at least graphic detail for me. And so I didn't think much of it, and about a week later I felt this pain in my head in class. And so I'm sitting in class and I'm in my chair and I felt this pain in my head, and rapidly I went to brain aneurysm. My brain just went to, I'm having a brain aneurysm, I'm dying right now. And I felt this rush of adrenaline, what I now know as adrenaline, come down from behind my neck and rush down through my neck and into my stomach, and I didn't know that it was adrenaline at that time, and I had just heard a story a week earlier in graphic detail, so my first thought was blood. I'm dying, there's blood pouring from my brain into my body right now. And I started to panic, and I raised my hand because I was gonna like try to attempt to get up and go to the nurse or something, because I was thinking that I was in serious peril. And I raised my hand and my teacher looked at me, and then everything just kind of went blank for me. I remember just kind of literally just kind of like slithering out of my little chair, kind of like moving out down to the floor. And I remember my teacher telling most of the kids to get out of the classroom and for someone to call 911, and one of my friends at the time stayed in the classroom with me. Everyone else left, and so I was on the floor, and my teacher came to me and he had me put my legs up on the wall and just had me start breathing deeply, and he asked me like, what are you feeling, what's going on, can you talk to me? And after I started kind of explaining what I was feeling, it's almost like he kind of knew what was happening to me and comforted me and said, look, like I've had these kinds of things happen to me, like insinuating that he had had panic attacks before. So that was really comforting for me. Once came, I was all checked out, just high blood pressure, that was about it, and rapid heart rate. So I ended up going home, and I stayed home for a week. I was so scared that I was dying from a brain aneurysm. It would not go away. It was on a fixated loop of obsessive thought in my head. Anytime I would have a pain, I would freak out, I would shut down, my body would become tense, I wouldn't be able to move. I started clearing my throat, and I would clear my throat to make sure that I didn't taste any blood in my mouth. If I was driving to and from school or driving anywhere, I would clear my throat. I would literally get up in my car into the rearview mirror and open my mouth and check my mouth for blood and be like, oh, okay, like we're good. So yeah, I stayed home for a week. I continued to have this anxious thought pattern. I did not like being alone. I'd sleep with my lights on. I went to the ER 2 times because I was having head pain, and I was convinced that there was an aneurysm in my brain, and I had CAT scans, negative. My brain looked fine, healthy, perfect, but I was just convinced that this is how I was gonna die, and it was such a fear. And again, with just like the other episode, it was the same idea of waking up first thing on my brain, last thing on my mind before I go to sleep, and it was really traumatizing. Another time I was going to Christmas Tree Lane, and it's a Christmas lane all lit up with lights, and I was on my way for Christmas. This was while I was having that episode of traumatic thoughts about the brain aneurysm, which carried on for about 6 months. So it was like a 6-month span that I dealt with that. So yeah, on the way down there, I was with my family. We were all having a good time, and I went into full-on panic attack mode. I was bawling my eyes out. I couldn't breathe. My aunt popped me a Xanax and was like, maybe you should go home. And I was like, yeah, probably should. So I ended up going home. I slept with my mom because I was just so scared. And this anxiety just took over my body. And I couldn't control my thoughts. As hard as I tried, I could not control my thought patterns. And so this went on for 6 months, and finally my mom's like, okay, let's go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor, and I'm put on my first anti-anxiety medication. And within 6 months, I'm feeling good again. I'm doing better. I'm not having any of these thought patterns. And so things were getting good, getting better. And anxiety started to diminish for me. I still had generalized anxiety with everyday things, but it wasn't these fits of anxiety where I was killing my body because of the amount of adrenaline that was being released, and just having these horrible symptoms, not wanting to get out of bed, and going into depressive states where I was so depressed because I couldn't get out of my thought patterns that I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I couldn't see me getting through these episodes. So my senior year of high school, about 3 months before graduating, I went through a breakup, and this is where some of my bipolar symptoms, which I now understand really played out, which is the impulsivity that I was talking about. I just became really impulsive, and as much as I would try to stop myself from doing things that I didn't really want to do, my brain would just urge me to. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know how to explain it, but I just became really impulsive. And so that's when my impulsivity played out for the first time. And I never really experienced anything like that. So that was interesting, let me tell ya. And moving forward after high school, I was feeling so good, not anxious, that I went off my medication and I did a mission trip. I was out of the country in Indonesia and Thailand. I lived in Maui for 3 months, and I was feeling good. I was just awesome. Yeah, I wasn't having any traveling anxiety, no obsessive thought patterns or anything like that. So I came home, and that's when things started to spiral down again. And ultimately, in this last episode that I had, it was the shortest, but it was categorized by the most anxiety I've ever experienced, the most impulsivity I've ever experienced, and the most depression I've ever experienced. I don't consider myself to be a super depressed person. With that said, I went through what is for me a deep depression during that time, and it was regarding a relationship and just I guess just uncertainties And so then my brain went to what if this happens? What if this works this way? And if I saw the person, I had to talk to them. I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't control my impulsivity. I had to contact them. And it just led me to the point where I was like so out of it that I was so stressed. I was stressed at work. I remember going into work one day and my body hurt so bad I could barely make it through a shift. It was like this wall of anxiety and obsessive thinking and fear is just in front of me. And here I am at the register dealing with people and I am back here. It's like I'm physically, me, Claire, is back here and I'm just stuck behind this wall. I can't get past it because I'm just thinking about these things. I had to really focus on like making sure I was giving back the right change and really like trying my hardest to focus on what people were saying because I was in such another planet of fear and worry and what's gonna happen if I don't do this or if this doesn't happen and what about this, that I was just so removed. So again, the achy legs, the tight shoulders, I would get out of work and I would be so nauseous that sometimes I would, on my way home, I would make myself throw up to try to feel better, thinking that that would help, and obviously it didn't. So that's when I got back on medication, and that's where I am now. After my last episode, before getting back on medication, I contemplated suicide for the first time in my life. I was contemplating suicide not due to the fact that I didn't want to live, because I want to live. It was due to the fact that I couldn't handle one more day of not being able to control my brain, not being able to think clearly, not being able to battle this fear, not being able to walk around and just not obsess on something and not feel sick to my stomach or aching and in pain and constantly worrying about whatever obsessive thing I was fixated on. So yeah, I went on a drive and I was really highly considering just taking my hands off the wheel, and instead of doing that, I reached out and texted my mom, texted some people in my close circle, and yeah, from there I got the help that I needed to move back out of that dark place, to move back out of that fear, to move back out of feeling sick, to move back out of feeling depressed, feeling like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Got back on my medication, like I said, and here I am today. And my bipolar is under review. There's aspects of me and characteristics that have played out over the years that signal that I can be or am bipolar and have a mood disorder. When you're looking at bipolar, you're looking at things like a lot of spending, states of depression, elevated moods that wouldn't be like a normal baseline mood. Like people would just think that you're really happy, but that's not your normal baseline mood. So for me, like I was taking trips to Target and spending excessive amounts of money. That's something that's kind of been looked at. The impulsivity, the depression, and then just that obsessive thought pattern. So that's kind of my story. I know that taking my life is not the option, it's not the route. It's not the way I want to go, and that's why I'm here to encourage you guys that taking your life is not the option, it's not the route, and it's not the way that I want you to go. Because if I had taken my life due to the fact that I just couldn't handle these things that I was going through, I wouldn't be here now to encourage you. I wouldn't be here now to speak out on mental health and awareness, and I wouldn't be here now to share my journey, to talk about health and wellness and nutrition and fitness and all these things that I really love and I'm passionate about that help combat mental disorder and can help you move on with your life and feel good and feel great and be able to seize those goals, seize those aspirations that you have. But ultimately, I'm just excited to continue along this journey and be able to continue to talk to you guys about where I'm at. Hey guys, so if you liked this last video, please subscribe, follow my channel. I'll be doing more videos on health and wellness as a whole. A lot of kind of recipes for food that I like to eat that helps my body, nutritional videos, fitness videos, but mostly mental health informational videos, casting away fears, and just kind of seizing the day. So